Hello, welcome back to the Terra devlog, a survival and exploration game set on your very own planet. I just want to start this video off by saying thank you all so much for 1000 subscribers. I truly appreciate all your nice and constructive feedback on both the game and the channel, so please keep them coming. I also told myself that when I passed 1000 subscribers, I would make a Discord server for the channel where we can chat and I can share some progress on Terra in between videos, and also answer some questions about the development in better detail than in the comment section here on YouTube. So if you want to join, an invite link is in the description. We're still a very small community of course, but I feel like a Discord channel is pretty nice to have anyways. So again, thanks a lot for 1000 subscribers and enjoy the video. In the last devlog, we used the voxel plugin to generate our planet procedurally and scattered some simple trees all around our world. This time I want to add some simple interactivity to our world, so that's why I'm going to start implementing 3 of the core mechanics for the game. First, I want to be able to gather resources from the world. Then I need a way to store these items, so we need some kind of inventory system. And then third, I want to be able to spend these resources in some way. These are 3 very typical mechanics for a survival game, so of course I want them in Terra as well. And since our planet is filled with these trees and honestly not much else yet, we should probably use them to implement our mechanics. So my plan is simply that we gather resources by harvesting these trees and picking up logs that they drop. And after that we need to be able to place these logs around our world to make structures. This covers all our 3 mechanics, and if we implement them in a clever way, it should be easy to extend them to work with all kinds of resources and be easily extendable for the future. So let's start this off with step 1, by making a way to gather resources. Since we want to gather logs from our trees, we need a way to chop them down. So the first thing I want to do is head over to Mixamo and find a simple punching animation. We don't have access in the game yet, so our poor character will have to punch the trees with his bare hands for now, but I'll give him an axe soon, I promise. And if you don't already know about this page, Mixamo, it is a great place to find tons of free animations for your games. They might not be the best in the world or fit 100% with your character, but they are great for prototyping, as you probably don't want to do a lot of custom handmade animations in this stage anyways. So after importing our punching animation into Unreal, I retarget it to fit with the Unreal skeleton, and voila, a very basic punching animation. Cool, now we just need to activate this animation when I click my mouse. And a very simple way of doing this is of course to just play the animation montage when I click the mouse button. And this works well if your game is single player. However, in my case, I want to make sure that my game works in multiplayer as well. And by using this simple solution, only the player clicking the mouse will see the animation play on their character. No one else will. I'll try to explain a bit why this is. So when I click my mouse button, only my computer knows about this button being clicked, right? So therefore, only my computer will run this mouse clicked event, and then start the animation. It won't run on anyone else's computer because their computers obviously don't know about this button being clicked. So we need to manually send a message to everyone in the same game as me and tell them that hey, I just clicked my button and I'm running this animation montage now. To do this, we have something called RPCs in Unreal Engine. They look just like regular events, except they're designed to help you send these messages to the other clients. They're very simple, you just make a regular custom event. And here in the details panel, we can set what type of RPC this event is with this replicates dropdown. There's one in here that is called multicast. If we select this and then call the event, it will run this event on all the clients connected to our server. So if we hook up our animation to this event instead, and then call this event when we click our mouse button, then the animation will be played for all the connected players. However, still when we try to click on our client, we can see that nope, it still does not run the animation for the other player. And that is because these multicast events, they have to be ran on the server. Because the server is the only one that can talk to all the clients connected to it. So therefore, if we want our client to be able to run this multicast event, we have to make another RPC. This time, it will be the Run on Server RPC. Because this RPC allows the client to ask the server to do something for it. And because the multicast can only be run on the server, our client will ask the server to run this multicast for us. So the whole functionality works like this when combined. I click my mouse button, then my game asks the server if it can run the animation on all the connected clients for us. And then, when done in this way, the animation will successfully be played for everyone, no matter if you are the one running the server or if you're just a client connected to it. So that's a little bit of multiplayer logic in Unreal Engine for you. I hope you found it helpful in some way. Alright, so now we have an animation that is played on all the clients. Now we just need to check if there is anything in front of us while we play this animation, so that we can punch the living crap out of it. I did this with a simple animation notify that does a sphere trace in the direction I'm looking, and then this sphere trace will detect what kind of actor or what kind of component I am punching. And as you can see, the trace becomes green when it hits the tree, so that means that we successfully have detected this tree. Now we just need to do something with it. And for now, the voxel plugin, which I'm using to generate these trees, have very limited interactivity with foliage. Basically, the only thing I can do with the trees is change the visibility of them, but I can work with that for now. So I set the visibility of the tree to false if I hit it, and now it looks like I am removing trees. Great! This is a bit boring though, as we usually would need to put some effort into chopping down the trees, and then be rewarded with logs when we manage to break it. So at the same time as I make the tree invisible, I want to spawn an identical tree blueprint at the same location as the old tree. And with this tree blueprint, I can do whatever I want. Like for example, give it some health and also make it shake a bit when I hit it. And then when the health is 0, I will destroy the tree, and then I'll spawn a log pickup for the player so he gets his reward. So I now have an interactable tree. If I hit it, it will shake and lose some health, and when the health is 0, it'll spawn a log pickup. Amazing! So that is step 1 finished. We now have a way to interact with our foliage to gather resources from it. Now we need to be able to store this log on our player somewhere. Currently I can walk over to it and pick it up, but in reality this just destroys the pickup, and I'm not able to use this log in any way, since I don't have an inventory that lets me interact with my items. So that is the next step, making a simple inventory system. I wanted my inventory system to be its own self-contained component, so that I could put it on anything that I want to be able to store items, such as chests and workshops, but also players and animals. This component will simply contain an array of all the items in this inventory, and how many there are of each of them. And it will also handle all the logic needed for it, such as adding and removing items. I won't go into detail on how I made it, as it is really quite simple at this point, but the important takeaway from it is that it is its own component, and that it contains the array of items in the inventory. Now we just need to make all our items. So I made a struct that contains some basic information that all items need, such as an ID and a name. And as the ID of my items, I'm going to use something I recently discovered in Unreal Engine called gameplay tags. If you don't already know what this is, it's used in the same way as regular tags, except that these gameplay tags can contain subtags. So, for example, the ID of a sword could be item.weapon.sword. And then, in my code, I can easily tell that this sword is a weapon and also an item I can store in my inventory. Then I can do some logic based on this information. Unreal also gives us this handy list of all our tags, so we can easily click what tags we want for our item without having to type it in manually every time we want to reference it. So that's why I want all my items to have gameplay tags as their ID. And now that we have our simple item struct, we can make a data table for this struct, where we can define a big list of all the items we want to exist in our game. For now, I'll just add these 3 test items, a sword, an axe, and the logs. Later, I will add more data to these items, such as what their icon will be in the inventory and their 3D meshes. Now that we have defined our new items, we can go into our pickup class, and when something is trying to pick this item up, we can try to get their inventory component, and if they have a valid inventory component, we can use the add item function to add some items to this inventory before it destroys itself. Okay, let's try this out. Let's cut down a tree, pick up the item, and then have a look in my player's inventory component. And yeah, I now have 5 logs. Great! But it would be really nice if we could actually see the logs on our screen as well with some kind of inventory UI. So I quickly mocked up a simple inventory slot widget that shows an icon and the amount of this item we have, and then just made a row of these inventory slots. And now would probably also be a good time to add the item icons to the item data struct we made earlier, so that we can find this item icon in our inventory UI. So I added a new field for a texture, and set the icon for the logs to be this nice log texture. And while we're here, I also added a field for the static mesh, as we want to be able to display this in our hand later. In my inventory UI, I can now use the inventory component to see what item should be in each of these inventory slots, and then set the icon texture and the amount text to their correct values. And look at that, we can now see all the items we have in our inventory in this hotbar. That's a lot better. I also made this hotbar scrollable, so we can choose what item we want to be active, and then based on what item we currently have active, I get the mesh of the item from the item data, and add this mesh to our hand, so it looks like we're holding our currently active item. Perfect! So now we have completed the second step, storing our items in an inventory. And that just leaves us with the last step, a way to use our resources. And as I mentioned earlier, I want to be able to place these logs in the world to make structures, so that's what I'm going to work on next. The first thing we'll do to make our building system is, and yeah, you probably guessed it, make a building system component that contains all our building logic. I like to separate my code into components, it makes everything way more manageable. Now that we have our component, we're ready to make the functionality we need. First, we need to know when our character is in build mode and when it's not. This will be decided by our currently active item. I will put this placeable checkbox in the item data along with everything else. And then, if it is a placeable item, we will enter build mode when this item becomes active, and make sure our logs have this checked. Then, when we are in build mode, we need a visual representation of the item we are placing, so we know how it's going to look like when it's placed. So I'll do a line trace in the direction I am looking, and make this representation follow where my line trace hits the ground every tick. And then, when I click my right mouse button, I want to place my item at the exact same location as my representation. And that's basically the core of our building system. Now I can place these logs anywhere I want. Oh, and look at that, I think my character is trying to tell you something. Currently I can just place infinitely of these without consequences. So let me quickly make sure to remove one log from my inventory each time I place one, so that I eventually run out and have to gather more. Another feature I want to quickly add to my building system is that once we have placed something, I want to enter some sort of snapping mode, so that the next item we place can be snapped perfectly to our previously placed item. So I made a function in my building system component that takes the hit location of our line trace and snap it to a custom grid based on the size of our currently active item. Here is the function in case you want to have a closer look at it. Then, after I place my first item, I make my placement logic use the snapping function so that the next item we place can be perfectly aligned with the previous one. If we no longer want it to snap, we just switch our active item to something else and then switch back, and then we'll no longer be snapping. I also made it so if you hover over an item that already exists, your placement will automatically start snapping to this item, in case you want to snap to something that already is in the world. The last thing I did in the building system is to let the player rotate the placement of your item with the R key. So this lets the player place items on an angle. I'll experiment a lot with this building system to see what works well and what doesn't. It's very simple at its current state, but it will of course be expanded upon when I need to improve it. Even with these simple features and with only logs, I managed to make a small house. Look at this, the first structure in Terra. This is a big milestone. So now we have all our 3 mechanics implemented. We have a way to gather resources, we can store items in inventories, and we can place our items in the world. All of these systems are of course in very early stages and will be approved a lot later, but it's very nice to have at least some of these core mechanics in place, so we have a base for all our other functionality to build upon. Alright, I'll end this devlog here, I hope you enjoyed it, and also if you want, don't forget to join the Discord server with the invite link in the description. If there's anything about Terra you have questions about or have suggestions for stuff, then Discord is a great place to do that. Or just hop in for a chat, of course. And also make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next devlogs. And if you enjoyed this video, a like would bring a big smile to my face. Thanks a lot. Catch you later.